Groceries are super expensive right now, so in this video, I'm sharing 20 strategies that will significantly cut your grocery bill. We'll cover every aspect of the process, from planning out your grocery list and avoiding mistakes at the supermarket, to cooking delicious meals with budget ingredients and getting the most out of your food. Let's get into it. And we'll start with the planning phase because you can set yourself up to save a lot of money well before you set foot in the grocery store using these 3 techniques. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is walking into the grocery store without being able to answer the simple question, what am I actually cooking this week? And that usually means you add a lot of unnecessary and often expensive items into your grocery cart. What I recommend doing instead is doing some basic meal planning before you go shopping. Think of the 3 or 4 or 5 meals you want to make this week and try to pick recipes that have some overlapping ingredients or components so you don't have to buy as many different ingredients. For instance, you can make this extremely delicious and easy queso to make buffalo chickpea quesadillas on Tuesday night dinner, and then you can use the leftover queso to make burrito bowls on Thursday. Or you might decide, I'm going to make this white bean kale soup and these Tuscan stewed beans in the same week because they have a lot of the same ingredients. Now write your grocery list with just the ingredients you need to make this week's meals. Having a concrete list of what you need to buy instead of walking into the store without a plan ensures you don't buy unnecessary fluff. But don't go to the grocery store just yet. My next tip is to take inventory of the food you already have at home, because you might already have the ingredients you need to make this week's meals. Half of an onion, some loose garlic cloves, a few cans of beans, baby spinach you can use in a recipe that calls for kale. I like to tally all of that up in my notes app so I can easily access it at the grocery store. But if you're like, listen lady, I don't have time to sit down and make a list like you, then just use your cell phone. Take a few photos of what's in your fridge, pantry, and freezer, and then you can check that at the grocery store. So much food waste happens because we don't do this step. We buy items that we already have hidden somewhere else that we may have forgotten about, and then those items end up going to waste, they expire, or they rot in our fridge. Even if you don't do that first step of meal planning, making an inventory of what's already in your kitchen on a regular basis will prevent you from buying duplicates at the store. The last thing I like to do before going to the grocery store is to check what deals are on offer this week. And I can do that because most grocery stores these days have searchable websites and even apps. Let's say you open your local grocery store app and see that mushrooms and wild rice are on sale. So you go to your favorite food blog or Pinterest, type in mushrooms and wild rice, and pick out a recipe that contains those ingredients. You pick another couple ingredients that are on sale and do the same thing. Or let's say you've already done some of that meal planning from tip 1 and you decide, I'm gonna make this delicious looking tofu stir fry this week. You open your app and you notice that the vegetables called for in the recipe, bell peppers and bok choy, aren't on sale, but that broccoli and carrots are. So you revise your list and use those vegetables instead. The benefit of doing this ahead of time is that when you walk into the grocery store, you already know exactly what you need to make this week's meals, instead of buying 15 random items on sale and hoping that they magically come together into something edible. Okay, you've done your planning, so now hop into your car or on your bike or on the subway and head to the grocery store to save some money. Let's pause for a second though. Which grocery store were you headed to? Were you headed to your local ethnic grocery store? Because you can save so much money on so many ingredients at these stores compared to your standard American supermarket. For instance, a 5-pound bag of jasmine rice at H Mart, a Korean grocery store, costs $7.99 or $1.60 per pound. In comparison to my local grocery store, this 2-pound bag of jasmine rice, a lot less rice, cost $5.79 or $2.90 per pound. And this applies to a lot of different ingredients: tofu, certain fruits and vegetables, seeds and nuts, and lots of pantry staples. If you have a local Indian grocery store, you can definitely save money on spices, lentils, and chickpeas. And if you have a Mexican grocery store, you can get tortillas, fresh and dried chili peppers, hot sauces, and other pantry staples for a lot cheaper. Not only will you be saving money, you'll also be inspired to cook some delicious, globally inspired meals. And that's the point. You can eat for cheap and still eat really well. Regardless of what store you end up at, one almost surefire way to save money is to shop the bulk bins. Because packaging food is expensive, which means you can buy the exact same product for cheaper if you buy it in bulk than if it were in a package. Another benefit is you can buy only as much as you need, so you have less food waste and less packaging waste. This is especially useful for spices and dried herbs you might not use that commonly. You can buy just a little bit for the meals you're making and not have to spend $7 on a bottle that might end up going to waste. The third technique you can apply while you're at the supermarket is to buy dried beans instead of canned beans. Canned beans are already a budget staple, but if you eat beans regularly enough, you can save a decent amount of money by switching to dried beans. For instance, 1 pound of dried beans makes 6 to 7 cups of cooked beans, which is equivalent to the amount in 4 15-ounce cans. plants. Let's say your family eats 1 pound of beans every other week, so 26 weeks out of the year. In just 1 year, switching to dried beans can save you up to $129. Yes, you do have to cook dried beans, so they're not as convenient and time is money, but hear me out. If you have an Instant Pot, you can literally just toss your beans, water, and salt into the machine, maybe a couple spices or seasonings, and let the machine do its magic. You don't have to stir, you don't have to babysit the pot. It's literally 1 minute of your time and the beans taste better. If you want to learn how to cook beans from scratch in your Instant Pot, it is all in this cookbook, which is by me. I am the author by the cookbook. Before you check out of the grocery store, you need to do 2 final things. 1, avoid any impulse purchases at the cashier stand, and 2, make sure you are signed up for that store's reward or membership program. You can save a shocking amount of money by doing this, and it's always free. So even if you don't go to this particular grocery store that often, it's worth spending that extra minute to sign up, because I have saved literally over $15 on a single grocery store run using just this technique. And if you are the kind of person that struggles with those impulse purchases, whether they're at the cashier stand or somewhere else in the grocery store, this next tip will help you save some money. It's to order your groceries online and then drive to the store to pick them up. That way you avoid stepping foot in the grocery store where all those temptations are, where you might spend unnecessary money, but you also save on grocery delivery fees because store pickup is almost always free. Thanks, pandemic! All right, you've got your meals planned, you've got your groceries unloaded, now you have to do some cooking. And there are a few techniques we'll talk about here that'll ensure that the meals you cook are not only inexpensive, but also filling and delicious. One of the most effective ways to save money is to limit the number of animal products in your diet. I mean, just look at the cost of animal-based foods like beef and fish and cheese and eggs compared to plant-based protein staples like lentils, beans, and tofu. Not only are these foods cheaper, you can make some really satisfying meals out of them and even mimic the textures and flavors of animal-based food. So whether you're looking for a taco meat, scrambled eggs, feta cheese, tuna salad, or chili, you can make that happen with plants. And there are a few plant-based staples in particular that are not only filling, but also inexpensive pretty much all the time. So I recommend using those to anchor your meals. Take cabbage, for instance. It's enormous, so you can stretch it out into a lot of meals. It's also really good for you and has fiber, vitamins, and anti-inflammatory antioxidants. In a previous video, I showed you how I like to make roasted cabbage steaks and use leftover roasted cabbage to make a deceptively delicious and creamy sauce. It's one of those dishes where you're like, how good could this be? And once you taste it, the question turns into, how the is this so good? Potatoes are another great option because they are always cheap and they are always delicious. And of course you can have them as a side dish, but if you want to give them some main character energy and make them an exciting main dish, just make some crispy smashed potatoes. Serve them with your favorite protein and a salad and you have a great dinner. And you can always add potatoes to basically any soup or stew to make it a little more filling. Onions are something you can obviously use to start almost any savory recipe, but you can also turn them into the main star of the meal, like with this caramelized onion pasta. Lentils are another great core item. They're filling, full of fiber, protein, and iron, and they're inexpensive. But don't just make like a simple pot of lentils and eat them plain. That would be selling lentils short. Instead, you can use lentils to make bold flavored curries, Indian dals, meaty pasta sauces, fresh and bright salads, and cozy soups. Meals you and your family will actually want to eat. Likewise, beans are so cheap and so good for you. In fact, in the blue zones of the world where people live the longest lives, they tend to eat legumes like beans on a daily basis. But I get it, draining a can of beans and putting it on top of your rice, while cheap, isn't exactly exciting. So make something a little more exciting, but still budget friendly, like these Mexican restaurant style black beans or these Tuscan white beans. Okay, you've got some core staple ingredients you can use to make some cheap and filling meals. But we want to make sure those meals are actually delicious, right? Otherwise, you're probably not going to want to eat them. And that is where flavor boosters come into play. There are certain pantry staples that are pretty inexpensive, but that are very high impact in flavor. Take tomato paste, for instance. It's got this amazing, sweet, tangy, concentrated tomato flavor you won't find in fresh tomatoes, and it adds so much umami to lots of dishes, from stews to pasta sauces to meat substitutes. Or preserved lemons. They sound fancy, but really all you need are lemons and salt to make them. And time. They do take a few weeks to ferment, but it's hands off, and once that's done, you are left with this amazingly unique flavor. Salty, savory, and lemony all at once, and it's going to take your stews and soups and pastas and salad dressings to the next level. I promise it'll make you feel like a fancy pants chef, and it is super cheap. Vinegars are another flavor booster, and while some vinegars, like an aged balsamic, can get a little pricey, even an everyday red wine vinegar or white wine vinegar can do a lot to improve your cooking. Onions and garlic are possibly the two ingredients I use the most because they do so much heavy lifting. When you saute onions in oil until they're deeply browned and then add some garlic in there, you have an incredible flavor base for so many things. Curries, meaty sauces, pastas, soups, you name it. And they're so cheap. Another fermented ingredient that adds a lot of flavor is soy sauce. And while you might associate that with mostly Chinese or Japanese food, you can use it in all kinds of foods to add a seriously savory depth of flavor. Lentil and bean dishes, soups, tofu scramble, barbecue sauces, and more. When you go to your local Asian grocery store, be sure to pick up some gochujang, which is Korean fermented chili paste. It is sweet, salty, spicy, savory, tangy, all in one ingredient, so it can transform so many dishes, including a simple sandwich. And don't leave without picking up some dried mushrooms. They're so much cheaper at your Asian grocery store than at your standard supermarket, and they're gonna infuse serious umami into soups, braises, stocks, and sauces. My next tip is to stretch out your meals using cheap staples. If you see a recipe that says serves 4, you can probably stretch it out into 6 meals by supplementing with inexpensive items like rice, beans, potatoes, and bread. So serve your curries over rice, your stews over potatoes, and dunk some bread into your soups. It's cheap and carbs are delicious. And if you're making a recipe with vegan mock meat, which can be on the pricier side, try stretching out the meal further by adding in a can of beans. One great source of inspiration for delicious but inexpensive meals is your pantry. So make a list of your favorite pantry meals and add them into your regular dinner rotation. I recommend starting with this 10-ingredient creamy pantry pasta, these spiced chickpea tacos, and this Italian white bean pasta stew. Okay, you've planned, you've shopped, you've cooked. Now it's time for something that a lot of us skip: reducing your food waste. And the first place to start is to find creative ways to use up your leftovers. I know leftovers aren't exactly sexy, but with a little creativity, they can be fun and maybe sexy, maybe, I don't know. One of the best ways to do this is to start making some bowl-style dinners. These aren't full recipes per se, but rather grab bag meals based on what you have in your fridge and pantry. I found that the key, at least for me, is to always have some grains on hand, like rice or farro, to use as the base. From there, just dig through your fridge and go wild. For instance, instead of letting your leftover hummus get dried and crusty, thin it out with some combination of lemon juice, water, and olive oil to make a salad dressing. Same thing goes for pesto. If you have a leftover half red onion or some cabbage, thinly slice it up and make some quick pickled onions or cabbage. All you need is vinegar, sugar, and salt. Take the leftover vegan yogurt from this week's breakfast and turn it into a savory yogurt sauce using garlic, lemon, and spices. And if you have a leftover half lemon you don't know what to do with, just peel it, chop it up, and add it to a salad for something bright and fresh. A lot of food waste happens because we are not optimally storing the produce that we buy. This could be a whole separate video topic, so if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments below. But for now, just a few food storage tips to help your produce last longer. Personally, I love making kale salads, but if I don't prep the kale ahead of time, it will absolutely wilt in my fridge. So when I get home from the store, I wash my kale, I thinly slice it, and I massage it with just a tiny bit of olive oil or lemon juice. Then I store it in a reusable bag and poke some holes in there so it can breathe. It'll stay good in the crisper for almost a week, and I actually end up eating it. For soft herbs like cilantro, parsley, and dill, what works for me is to wash them when I get home from the grocery store, let them dry off while I unpack the rest of the groceries, and then I roll them up in a dish towel or a couple paper towels and store them in a sealed bag. They should stay good for 2 weeks in the crisper like this. For carrots, always store these in a bag because they will shrivel very quickly when stored loose. And if you like to go through lemons and limes like me, you can just store them on a counter for up to a week, but for longer, make sure to store them in the fridge. Another way to reduce your food waste and stretch your groceries further is to upcycle ingredients that would otherwise go to waste. For instance, if you have a small handful of leftover soft herbs, just add them to any condiment. Seriously, 95% of condiments will be better with some fresh herbs, so whether it's a tahini sauce, a yogurt sauce, or a pasta sauce. If you have a generous quantity of leftover herbs like basil or mint or parsley, make a pesto or a chimichurri or a chutney. If you've got sturdy herbs like thyme, rosemary, sage, or oregano, make a bouquet garni. Y'all already know that's my favorite technique for infusing herby flavor into soups, but you can also do this technique with a pot of beans or lentils. Or you can make some herby olive oil cubes. This is a really fun way to infuse great flavor without too much work. Another food that's wasted a lot is bread. It gets stale, it gets tossed. But stale bread is actually great for making croutons and breadcrumbs, two of my favorite food groups. Your salads and bowls will taste so much better and you'll be a food waste hero. Something that's often overlooked are the juices or brines in canned condiments. Not only can you use these, they're often full of flavors. The oil in a jar of sun-dried tomatoes or jarred artichokes is great for a salad dressing or to start a pasta. I like to use caper brine in all kinds of sauces, and the brine from pickled jalapenos is great when you want to add some nacho-esque flavors. Similarly, you can upcycle all of the vegetable scraps you will certainly accumulate if you are eating a plant-based diet or even a plant-forward diet. Pack them into a large freezer bag, and when that bag is full, make some homemade vegetable broth so you don't have to buy it at the store. You can find a recipe in chapter 1 of my cookbook. Okay, this next tip I saw on Instagram and it is genius. It's called an eat first bin. What you want to do is grab a storage bin and put it in your fridge at eye level. And every week you fill it with the foods that are going to expire first. So when you open your fridge to make dinner, those ingredients are right in front of you and you can figure out how to incorporate them into the meal instead of letting them go to waste. If you're someone who regularly grocery shops and has a pretty well-stocked pantry, you might want to try this next tip. It is to commit to buying nothing, no food, no groceries for a whole week, or even 2 weeks if you have a big enough stash. And then you just eat up whatever you have in your pantry, fridge, and freezer. This is a challenge for sure, but if you've been following my channel for a while, hopefully you've upped your creativity in the kitchen and will be able to whip up some really delicious meals based on what you already have at home. Your freezer is your best friend when it comes to preserving food and preventing food waste. So you can't freeze everything, can't freeze pasta or salads, but you can freeze a lot of stuff with good results. Soups, stews, tagines, dals, curries, pasta sauces, and if you freeze them in single-serve containers like I like to do with my super cubes, they defrost really quickly. You can also freeze condiments you've opened up but probably won't use anytime soon. Things like tomato paste, canned tomatoes, tomato sauce, chipotle peppers and adobo, curry paste, and pesto. Just be sure to label them with the name and date so you actually know what's in there and how long you can use it for. By now, you are probably looking for some budget-friendly but delicious recipes you can start cooking at home, so I've got a short playlist for you right here. Thanks for watching, bye!